just told Nathan I started watching the Fast films.
Fast
Saga 2 days ago.
Have you seen them before?
I realized that I've only watched through Tokyo Drift, and I never watched.
Oh my
any further.
god! Once you hit 5, they just become superhero movies.
It is,
but their superpower is cars.
I was dead laughing at the beginning of 5 when Vin Diesel takes a crowbar up the side of his head, and he just goes, ah! Throws the guy off the train. I'm like, what is happening here? We'll get into that though, because those movies are about family, and that's what we're about here.
You're listening to the Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean, American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to a subdued version of the Janchi Show intro portion. I don't know what
a real chill intro to the Janchi Show. My name is KJ. With me is Patrick in the world. This is an interview show, as you can probably tell by the title. So that means that we're not going to be spending a ton of time at this portion. And Nathan is, where is he? Is he vacationing?
I think he's in California making up for spring break and seeing family.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Nathan's off living a life, and we're the folks at home doing the hard work so that Nathan can be free.
Living vicariously through him in the places that he is right now.
But mostly through his selfies. It's not like, look at this place. It's just like, hey, here's a picture of me in front of some takeout containers.
A lot of takeout containers, yeah.
So many takeout containers. Patrick, what does Janchi Show mean? What does Janchi mean? Why do we call ourselves the Janchi Show?
Janchi means feast in Korean, and we are the Janchi Show because we feast at the end of our show. But we are also on snacks of Korean or now Pan-Asian origin. And we also are a show because each of the 3 of us share the identity of being Korean adoptees. And we talk about that stuff. So that's what we do here. That's why we're the Janchi Show.
Yeah, we typically interview Korean adoptees when we have guests on, although that is not always the case. And so if you are a transracial, transnational adoptee and you want to come on the show, you can head to janchishow.com/guest, fill out a guest form, and we'd love to have you on and have conversations with you. But this week, we have a fantastic conversation with Erik Kemp. Erik was a friend of ours that I met for the first time in Dallas. He was just like, yo, I'm coming to the show. I was like, cool, man. But I think did he know Nathan in person? Yes. And then like you had met him?
Did you meet him before? Okay, so we talk about it a little bit in the episode, but Nathan did know him first.
Okay.
Amongst all of us. But I don't remember if I met him before Dallas or if I just talked to him on socials. Gotcha. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But we also talk about our in-person connections now because
cute.
Yeah. Multiple trips to LA where I was able to hang out with him. So we talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic episode. And it was great too. Like I always think it's such a privilege to be able to catch up with someone that we've gotten to meet in person. And so we have like kind of a unique conversation with him because it's not like, usually when we have guests on, it's like, oh, it's nice to meet you. Anyways, tell us your deepest, darkest stories.
Right.
But this time, like, we've already met. So it was more like catching up with a friend than it was like meeting someone for the first time.
Yeah, but it's also interesting to me to have friends on the show, like after we've been friends, and then hear them kind of walk through their story.
Yeah.
And because I feel like I have bits and pieces, like I knew bits and pieces of Erik's story, but to hear him kind of tell that full tale and weave that narrative was really interesting and really powerful because there's some stuff that I did not know that he shared. And I was like, oh shit. Like it really, I was very thankful and privileged for him to have shared that with us. So
yeah, absolutely. It's a really fantastic interview and we had a lot of fun. And we recorded late at night our time. So I think all of us, especially towards the end, we're getting a little slap happy.
A little snack happy.
Snack happy. Oh, excellent. Yes.
Yeah. We did have a good snack. So, well, I guess without further ado, we can kick it over to our interview with Erik Kemp, right?
Let's do it.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Janchi Show interview portion.
Hooray.
We are very excited to be back for another interview with a very special guest, friend of the show, and
IRL friend of the show.
IRL friend of the show. Erik Kemp joins us today on the Janchi Show. How you doing, Erik?
I'm doing well, guys. How's everybody doing?
It's great to see you again. Yeah,
it is great to hang out with you.
It really is great to see all of you. And, it's one thing to kind of like engage with you guys parasocially or like, just over social media. And that's one thing. But like to be able to talk with you guys, see your faces. KJ, looks like, you got some beard action going last time I
guarantee I had that the last time you saw
What?
Yeah. No. So there's photo evidence.
Okay. All right.
Of my face. Look at those photos.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll look back on them fondly.
Yeah.
For folks who don't know, when I was in LA last year, Erik would come drive down to the airport where I was staying and pick me up not 1.5 hours away. And he did that like 4 times out of the 5 days that I was there. So we became fast and best friends during that trip. So I appreciate you, Erik, for being such a good dude.
Oh, now he's your best friend? Because as I recall, Hannah used to say that he was her best friend. And then I had to explain that I met him first in Colorado before any of you.
Yeah, but did you become best friends? Just because you met him doesn't mean that you became best friends. We met and became best friends on multiple trips from the airport. So
this is true.
All right, enough fighting over Erik. Erik,
that is enough fighting over Erik.
Yes.
Take it away, Erik.
You know how we do
this. Share as much
this.
or as little of your story with us as you like. You're here on the show now. You know how we do it.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, I guess my story starts out on February 29th, 1988. So for those of you keeping count at home, that's leap day. So already starting off with a kind of a unicorn situation here.
Nice.
On my paperwork, whether I trust it or not, it says I was born in Gwangju City, which I was confused on whether that was the southern province or the southern kind of, district or I think it's province, but there's also a Gwangju City that's just east of Seoul. In any case, on the paperwork, it also said that it was not just like 2 days later, I was in Seoul at Holt, and that's where I kind of got processed and what have you. And then 4 months later, I was here in the United States. My parents picked me up at Seattle, in Seattle, and then took me over to Salt Lake City, Utah, where they resided for 2 years with me and my also adoptive sister, she's Korean, adopted, 3 years older than I am, not biologically related. And then we moved to Denver, Colorado, where I called that home for about 30 plus years. Not trying to date myself too much, but 30 plus years. And then
we're not ageist on the show, Erik. We haven't said that in a long time. Sorry.
We haven't needed to say that in a long time.
We haven't said it in a long time. It felt good to come out.
Yeah.
It's a throwback.
Oh my goodness. Well, do I call Nathan Young still? I think I do, right?
Yeah, you
probably.
do.
Okay. So I still do. Yeah.
We're just age aware.
Yeah, age aware. Yes.
Age aware. I agree. And then most recently, it'll be 2 years in July that I moved out here to Los Angeles. And currently living in Koreatown and currently working for Radio Seoul as of this recording. So, just a lot of life changes. Kind of, I know I skipped a huge gap there. Growing up, I was really into sports. I was always a very creative child. I loved drawing. I love writing, storytelling in general. I was an indoor and outdoor kid. Like I would go outside and play football with my friends, and then we would like stay up all night drinking Surge and playing video games. Like that Surge. That was my childhood.
What kind of video games though? Because if you just play if you play like sports video games, that doesn't count.
Sports video games was more like ideation of like.
It was just like manifesting who you wanted to be. Yeah.
I always created my Erik Kemp character, and he would just run all over the place, or he would dunk on people's faces.
I still do that.
Yeah, I still do. I still do too. MLB The Show, dude. I'm just jacking home runs left and right.
Yeah. I resonate with that so hard.
I'm glad I said jacking home runs. Any case, moving on. So happy childhood, honestly, and grew up with a lot of animals in the house. My sister was there. And then I think the unique thing that isn't really prevalent in the kind of adoptee community is that I'm from a transracial family, but my mother, she's third generation Japanese American, and my father is white. And then just kind of adding on to the unicorn factor of like, where do I fit in this world? They were also Mormon. So growing up Mormon, there was this heavy religious influence and living that Mormon style and living that within that Mormon community and kind of having that be a part of my life up until 12, 13 years old, where I started to get a tad more rebellious and I engaged with there was this pivotal moment where it was Sunday. I didn't want to go to church and I locked myself in the bathroom and they took a screwdriver to that door handle to get me out. Just because I refused to leave. I refused to let go of the handle. So, I kind of came to this reckoning with religion and then also just anger and rebellion early on in life, like 12, 13 years old. And up until that point, I was very happy, good grades, very active, had friends and stuff like that. But, they're just, I don't know if it wasn't something, because you guys talk about the apocalypse or like this kind of no turning back moment a lot. And I don't think there was ever like that moment, or I can't specify or I can't name it, but I know it's been like kind of this series of moments, these little stages in life that I'm like, whenever I look back on my life, I'm like, oh, things changed there. And then things changed a little bit here. Or I felt like I took a step back there. And then I felt like I went in a different direction there. So trying to point out my own apocalypse, it's near impossible.
I think that's fair. Like, so to borrow some religious language, people often talk about like in Christianity, like salvation as like a singular moment, an apocalypse, if you will. And yet John Wesley, I don't know, one of the Wesley brothers who founded Methodism, I think it's Charles Wesley, talks about like his like conversion, quote unquote, to Christianity as like a strange warming in his heart. And so like there is the sense of, I think like it can be a singular moment and it can be like a slow fade or like a dimmer switch, just like coming on or fading off. So I'm really glad to hear you voice that. And I'm curious too, if you don't mind just kind of hanging out here in this like 12 to 13-year-old space. What was the thing that made you like pull away from the religion you were given? And then I actually have a follow-up question, but I'm going to hang out with that one first.
I think what first made me pull away from religion entirely, and especially kind of the Mormon faith, was that it was heavily involved. Like you had seminary classes that you went to on like every day almost, it felt like, or at least once a week. You had a homeschool teacher on Mondays that would come, and he was a great guy. I love Sherman, but I mean, the guy was, I mean,
shout out.
I love Sherman.
Yeah,
shout out Sherman.
But it's one of those things where it's like my Sunday's completely occupied, and then the first Sunday of every month, it's like 4 hours of service. And then you had like a home teacher that was another 3 hours on a Monday night. And then, you had in high school, you had seminary classes. So you're just like, and then also on your social life is entrenched with those that you go to church with too. And for me, I was questioning faith. I was questioning religion in general. And, they also made it something to note, like it was supposed to be this personal engagement with God, religion, this Holy Trinity, right? The Holy Spirit. And for me, it was like, I can't engage with any of this. I'm not getting any answers. I feel like I'm just shouting into the nether, and like, who cares? Like, who cares? Like, I felt like there was no consequences at a certain point too, and other than parental judgment. But for me, I guess at a very early age, I was just like, religion and kind of just feels like BS to me. And it was just make believe. And I'm like, well, what's that any different? And I think that's where like, and I've always kind of turned to comedy as a defense mechanism. So I apologize if any of my jokes like might seem offensive. It's just more like, you know, for me, it's like I follow the people that, yeah, if they want to praise the flying spaghetti monster or the fawns or whatever, they can certainly do that. And that's the thing, is that there are churches, there are belief systems that follow these kind of insane things going on. I'm like, well, how's that any different? And for me, it was more about just like being a good human being, being a good person, and I don't think I needed a belief system for that. Especially with religion and also the very tenuous Mormon faith.
Yeah. No, I hear that. And I think I just asked because I remember being that age and being deeply entrenched in Christianity. Not quite like, I mean, well, I don't know. I went to a Christian school at the time. So it was a lot of Christianity all the time forever. And and I just remember being super angry. But I don't know, like for me, that didn't necessarily have anything to do with my adoption story at that time. And yet I feel shades of that now. So I was just kind of curious, like what was happening there and where that anger came from, besides just like puberty and like probably adoption and just like being angry. So
definitely. To be quite honest and just fair to myself and to the people that have come through in my life, like I was angry for a long time and didn't know why. And I never pointed to adoption for that. Because I guess I'm kind of burying the lead here, but like growing up in Denver, Colorado, there was actually these heritage camps that I went to ever since I was 5. And it was for adoptive families. And so we'd all go to the mountains in Winter Park, Colorado, or close to it. And we would go to the YMCA, the YMCA kind of establishment up there. We'd rent out the cabins, all the spaces, and then all these adoptive families across the nation would come together, and we'd go through kind of like workshops and seminars, and we'd be with similar age groups, and it was really great. That was like my favorite time of the year, because once again, I couldn't voice it back then, but for me it was like, I get to have a sense of kinship. I get to see people that look like me. There was so much that actually just went unsaid, which was wonderful. I never felt like I had to explain myself when I was up there.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of this gorgeous thing that happened. They'd bring in Korean musicians. There would be like a hanbok parade. There would be with like the littler kids. It was adorable. I look back on it now, not as fondly, but at the time it was very adorable. Well, because I'll speak to it right now, is that looking back on it with, a little bit more of a critical perspective, it's a bunch of white adopters throwing on hanboks onto adopted children, and then parading them around like as they're there for your entertainment. So I get that wasn't the intention, but the intent, and I think I've heard you say this, KJ, or you guys have said this on the show, that intent does not always negate impact. And so that's not something that like I'm scarred by, or because I was part of those parades and stuff, but it's just one of those things where you have this different perception of, this used to be a good thing in my life, and now it's a little bit bittersweet. And I felt like that's been kind of my adoption journey in general, growing up with these camps, becoming a camp counselor, becoming a counselor coordinator. I started seeing through the veil of how these camps are run, or how it was being developed, or the people in charge of it. And I, quite frankly, as I got deeper and deeper, I didn't like what I saw. Now, sure, I can't speak to the camp's current status there, but I know that there's more adoptees on the board now, and that they are still doing programming, albeit with less Korean adoptees each year. The scale isn't as big. So at its height, this Korean heritage camp had 250 families. And you figure the average family was about 4 people,
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
And the camp was, it was a lot.
It's the largest one in the nation.
Yeah.
So
The one endeavor.
Encyclopedia Nathan just dropping some facts.
These are things I've learned about it since I've been here because I never had heard of it actually, even from California or even when I was in college here. I never heard about it. But since then, I've learned that it's one of the largest. It's also got over, I think, 9 different camps, not just for Koreans, some for Chinese adoptees, South American adoptees. So they have different weeks or days or locations even for those different camps and stuff. So it's growing, and I think Shanae might even be speaking at it this year. And I've actually gotten in contact with the organizers for potential Janchi Show stuff. But
look at you.
It was something that we can talk off air as
anyways, back to Erik.
Yes. I actually do have a question and a comment. Or a comment and then the question. I think it's interesting that you brought up how you didn't feel like you had like an apocalypse moment per se, but it was more of a series of moments. And then you told us about how you were involved in these heritage camps really early. And not only as just a participant, but somebody who then moved into the system as like a leader, as a counselor and stuff. And I feel like it makes total sense that you wouldn't have one singular moment because you were engaging with this community, even unwittingly, from a very early age. And so you were kind of exposed. And not only that, but then exposed to kind of the side of the system that we don't talk about when we're growing up. The things that we can't articulate, you were finding probably some language and stuff for, or at least thinking about it more critically.
At least having some feelings about it.
Yeah, like when we're teenagers and like we're pissed off about other stuff, like you're like pissed off about the right things, just you don't know why yet. It's like, why is this
I'm angry,
a problem?
but I don't know why. But it's different than your anger.
Right. How did that experience then shape the way that you navigated engaging with other adoptees and or the Asian American community moving forward after you left? Well, I guess you probably didn't leave Denver. You said you were there for 31 years, but after you left like high school and you went to college, you did other stuff. Like how did that shape the way that you navigated those relationships based on your experience at the camps?
Absolutely. And that's a great question too, because I consider myself very grateful and very privileged to be able to have these camps be a part of a large part of my life. I met, and still have some of my greatest friends come from there. But in regards to how it shaped, my behavior or experiences in the outside world, outside of Denver, Colorado, outside of the camps, outside of just, any kind of safety net, it's interesting because I think we all develop like these little mini scripts that we use, right? And it's like, I'm Erik Kemp, I'm adopted, blah, 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 blah. And you just kind of run through the motions because and it's just kind of this natural response. So, and I've always felt very comfortable in sharing that I am adopted with other people, mostly because I'm not afraid of the questions. I'm not afraid of the triggering moments that, because I'm doing better to trying to acknowledge other people's experiences with these moments. Because for me, for a long time, I've been able to kind of either shirk them with a silly response or just kind of like avoid it and not care anyway. I think that's where the camps kind of really helped me feel comfortable about who I am as an adoptee and feel either a sense of pride or just confidence in kind of engaging with others or letting people know about that. As far as Asian Americans go, I felt like that was more difficult to navigate than I would say the wider public.
Sure.
And it's mostly because I think the one thing that I did struggle with a lot, as far as being a transracial intercountry adoptee from Korea too, was that how do I feel Korean enough in certain spaces? And, I think, you guys have talked on the show where you'd get to college and you're like, oh, there's an Asian organization. Do I engage? Do I not engage? I was always like trying to be first one in the door and like, engage with others and stuff like that.
I can imagine that.
Yeah.
Knowing you now, I can imagine that.
Yeah.
But it didn't always turn out for the best because like they had all these in-jokes. They had all these different experiences than me. They had all this cultural knowledge. That's where I got that stupid Korean pun from that we talked about earlier on the show or off air. But that's where a lot of these things come from, and it's because they stuck in my mind so much to the point where I'm like, how do I be a better Korean? How do I be a better Korean? And in a certain way, my current situation where I'm working for Radio Korea, where it's a Korean language broadcasting system, and I'm also in Koreatown, I think those are still subconscious manifestations of me trying to be like to earn my Koreanness. But in a certain sense too, it's like I've just become more comfortable in engaging with other Asians once I know a little bit more of the language. Also, food is such a great thing that brings people together. So, and I have the stomach for it too, to prove that I like food and I love trying out a whole bunch of other stuff. So, I think being able to connect with people that way, something that's innocent, something that's non-controversial, something that we can all kind of enjoy, has really been quite a pleasure in connecting with others. But
Erik Kemp,
basically dived in the deep end.
Erik Kemp, one of the most friendliest dudes you'll ever meet. I swear, one of the best qualities of my dad is that he could just talk to anybody, and that is 100% Erik Kemp. When we went to the CAFLA Gala, I was like, this dude is just talking to everybody, and I love it, and connecting with everyone. I thank you for sharing that. Before we jumped ahead, I wanted to ask one other follow-up question, specifically about the camps. And so you touched on how when you came out of that experience, like you were comfortable navigating the conversation about being adopted. I think that's really interesting. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you because you were kind of learning in that experience, whether it was adoptee centric or focused knowledge that you were learning at the time, you were still picking up that comfortability to be able to talk about it. Do you remember if you walked away with any language specifically that you were using as an adoptee versus what like we see a lot now from like a lot of adoptees like us, who in the last 3 years have started to use some of this language that's kind of been floating around for a little while?
That's a great question. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because no, I didn't. I built up these defense mechanisms, and I developed kind of what we were talking about, that script. So it was kind of like a customer service script. It was just like, okay, if they say this, then say that. If they do this, then do that. And so that's what I was running through my head, and I got pretty good at it. But as far as, TRA, intercountry, even coming out of the fog, I don't know if we want to even use that term anymore. And that's the thing is, like, I've been able to, and once again, I think if we're going to point to any kind of apocalypse, the COVID-19 was one of them, where I started seeking out a little bit more, because I was all stuck inside. I couldn't really see my friends. So I was stuck, and I was like, well, now is as good as time as ever to kind of start looking through this stuff. And it wasn't shortly after that I met Nathan on my way to LA at a kind of a mutual dinner party, where I was like, so Nathan, what are you doing? He's like, well, I got this podcast thing. You want to check it out? I was like, oh, okay, I love podcasts, and then I just like marathoned through all of your stuff. So just kind of, well, I shouldn't say marathon. I definitely just sprinted through a lot of those podcasts, and then I started engaging.
At that point, it was only like 20 episods, probably.
I know, and that's why I was like,
now someone has to do now it is a marathon. It's 130.
Now it's just a weekly thing for me, so it's just perfect. But really, getting back to your point, Patrick, was that like I had certain scripts, sayings, behavior, defense mechanisms built in from those camps, whether they were to the benefit of the adoptee or not. It was just a way of getting through a conversation and explaining who I was. However, I didn't develop actual, I think, academic verbiage or vernacular to fully express and identify what it was I was going through, who I am, and what I identify with. So a long time I was just like, yeah, I'm adopted from Korea, or I'm a Korean adoptee, which is fine. But once you start saying like, well, my parents aren't the same race as me, like, is there a word for that? or like the fact that there's this loss of country and culture and language. Is there a word for that? So in seeking out language, somebody that, for me, something that I think people should know about me is like, I seek out how language and communication can dictate our experiences on such a, it can have such a huge impact on how we formulate our experiences. And so being able to have that language, being able to have that vocabulary is crucial. And it's amorphous. It's constantly changing. And that's something that I've also learned from the queer community, is that there's these words that are constantly changing, constantly morphing. It's all fluid. And it's what you can make of it. And you're constantly redefining what those terms mean. And for adoptees, I feel like that's what we're currently doing, or we have set things in place, but there's still a ton of work to do. And I think for me personally, there's still kind of a ton of work that I want to do to make sure that I'm further defining my experiences, and which is also going to help me identify who I am as a person.
We talked about it.
Listening to you parse through your own experiences. I think it's really interesting, and I can tell how, maybe I'm reading into this actually, but it feels to me like you're unsure, and a lot of you being on this podcast, I think, is you being willing to be unsure publicly. So thanks for that. I think it's really important and really wonderful. I think like because it's the medium of podcasting, and especially if like people are regular listeners, you can fall into the trap of like, oh, these people know what they're talking about, whatever. And I personally try to emphasize a lot that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I personally try to emphasize a lot that I'm still on this journey of discovery. And even like when I'm looking through your form, you answer a lot of our questions with questions, which I think is really, you're just like, I don't know.
It's a real Ron Swanson of you.
You're just like, what's happening? What's going on? Who makes me? Am I a man? Am I what? All these things. And I think it's really lovely. And so just listening to you question those things and parse through your past experiences, I think what's so interesting is like, I definitely identify, that being given that language, going to a camp from 5 to say high school, is that an accurate timeline?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So from 5 years old to high school graduation, you fall into the rhythm. You actually not even maybe fall into the rhythm. You're given a template, and then you develop your own script for, here's my name, here's where I'm from. Like, and I think it's like, we've moved away from it because we haven't been asking that specific thing, which has been intentional. But like, we're like, oh, what's your adoption story? Most adoptees would be like, well, I was adopted from blah, blah, blah. And I was this month old, and I was, or however old, and I was adopted to here, or blah, blah, blah. And I have siblings. Like everybody has, all those adoptees have those scripts, right? And that's because like when we were growing up, that's what adults wanted to know from us. And I don't know that many of us made that conscious choice to say, you know what? I'm an adult now. I can tell my own story. I could change. I could choose to ask different questions and those kinds of things, And I think it's really lovely that you are asking different questions, and that idea of playing with language and just trying to find out like what feels right for you is so important. Because like, I don't know, like the apocalypse thing, I think feels right for me sometimes, and then you're like, no, I don't know that I've had an apocalypse moment, but oh yeah. That also feels right. And, I think the idea that we're allowed to change and we're allowed to continue to update our lingo is good and is right. Where do you think you are now in terms of how Korean you feel, how adopted you feel, how you would describe Erik Kemp?
How adopted
where
are you?
And can I mean, no,
that's a good question.
Yeah,
I feel a little 70% today.
The wording of it is just, it's funny.
Well, and I think the reason I do that is because like I had the chance to meet someone from Sudan, and he and his parents immigrated, I don't know, sometime in the like previous century. So he's been here for a long time. And it was a small talk conversation, whatever. And we're just like, oh yeah, here's 2 minorities. Let's talk about ourselves, Sure. But I was like, how quickly then can I subvert the question and try to break someone out of the script that they might fall into.
Right.
Yeah. Because I want to get, so how adopted do you feel? How Korean do you feel? How would you describe Erik Kemp right now?
Can I piggyback on top of that too? And how much of the move from Colorado to California has affected that at all?
Those are great questions, and that's an amazing follow-up. Thinking about how I'm, I've always felt this insecurity of not being Korean enough. But it was also from, it also stems from like my initial rejection of Korean culture too. Because with those camps, they're only like 4 days out of the summer, and then you're back. And then you're back in the real world where you kind of shirk all that and you put it aside and you kind of bury it deep or you compartmentalize it.
Like, was that a dream?
Well, it's like, who has the time too? So like, how do you keep doing all that stuff?
I don't know. That's a great point, is that we had kind of that moment for a year and then we had to quickly let it go. And granted, there were still people in the area that I kind of frequented and talked with, but we were all at our respective schools. We were all going through different things, but at a certain point, I just had to be one of the crowd again. And I fought for that. But where I am at now is that there's this guilt of that initial rejection, right? Because I went to I remember very fondly that I went to, well, maybe not fondly, but I remember well that I went to a Korean culture class with my sister and a bunch of her friends. And then, I didn't have anybody there. And maybe that's probably why I rejected it. Was I only went to this one class and they talked about Korean culture, K-pop, all that stuff. And I rejected it. I didn't like it. I was just like, this is not for me. This is not classic rock. This is not football. What is this? So I rejected it. I was done with it and I didn't want to hear any more of it. And then when I was 17 years old, this was the summer before my senior year. I had a lot going on. I wanted to be with my friends for that one last summer. In any case, my mom's like, hey, there's this opportunity to go to Korea. And I rejected that. And that's another, one of those kind of regrettable moments. So where I'm at now, I feel like some of that is me trying to make up for those moments that I rejected earlier on in my life, where I had those opportunities. I had that privilege to actually go and engage with these things. Whereas, and this was also in Denver, Colorado, which was still it's still a very white populous place. You know this, Nathan, but and it's getting better. But at that time, to have those kind of resources at such an early and formidable age was huge. And I currently regret not being able to take advantage of those when I did. And so right now, yes, it can be like this thing where I'm trying to make up for it, but it's also just because I'm a lot more comfortable. I'm less I don't feel like I need to be Korean enough anymore. It's just more like, hey, give yourself some slack here. You didn't know the language. You were crappy at acquiring languages in general. I was not good. I joined, it was a middle school. I took French because there was a girl in that class I really liked, and French was not for me. And so then I went to Spanish, and so I was already behind in Spanish. And then I was like, Spanish is not for me. And then in high school, they had German class, and I was like, oh, let's do German. And then I was like, this is all confusing. They said it was closer to English language, so I did that.
You're like, how?
Yeah,
which
it
English
was not closer.
Yeah,
they shared kindergarten, and that was probably the one thing that
Waffle,
I learned.
maybe.
And beer garden. But all these things, the language, the culture, the look, right, all of it, I just felt like I was rejecting it, and not fully embracing it, and also felt rejected by it. Every time I tried to engage with others who are Korean American or first gen 1.5s, 2s, 3s, it didn't really matter because I just didn't have those kind of experiences that they had. So where I'm at currently here in Koreatown, I'm loving it. I really am. It's just so much a blend of cultures. Actually, a lot of people think Koreatown's mostly Koreans. It's actually 50% Latino, 30% Korean, and then there's actually a big Oaxacan population here. There's just such a blend of foods. Thai Town is like just a few blocks north of Koreatown. Little Armenia is just kind of northeast. So there's just so much culture here. And to Nathan's point about moving to California, that was a decision. If I'm going to pick any kind of apocalypse, that was my apocalypse, I guess, well, and I point to COVID-19 was that in 2021, February, I remember it because I was in the hospital for my birthday. I got COVID and it was bad. It was really bad. And they gave me a pulse oximeter. They said if it goes under 90 and stays under 90, you're going to have to go to the hospital. I was like, okay. And so there was one night a blizzard was coming in and my pulse oximeter was like 85 and just kind of staying there. I was like, great. Damn. Well, I'm going to call my mom and see if she can drive me to the hospital. So she takes me to the hospital. I spent, 4 days there. But the first night, I just didn't know if I was going to wake up the next day. So
that sucks.
Yeah, it was scary. And I never had that kind of, I don't know, like I never really had that kind of life or death moment. And then speaking of regrets, I was like, well, like, what did you always want to do, like that you didn't think, that you never engaged with? And it was like, well, I never got out of Denver, Colorado like I wanted to. And I never, moved to Southern California and pursued the film and television industry or do any of that. Well, if I make it out of here, then I'm going to do exactly that. And so that's what I did. Put in my 2 weeks notice from a great software company that I was working with. Shout out to Brandfolder. And honestly, they said go for it. And my parents, they were obviously hesitant to do that, but I saw that Los Angeles County was opening up in July 2021. I was like, okay, I'm there. I had to kind of rely on my old career in radio to kind of get a landing job down here in Los Angeles, but and kind of go through some family friends for a living situation, all that stuff. But that was where one of the first times I felt like I'm on my path as opposed to anybody else's expectations.
Yes.
Nice.
And
Dude,
so,
yes.
Yeah, I felt stunted and, infantilized my entire life. And for the first time, the ripe age of 32, 33.
We're not ages on the show.
Eric.
I know. But I think that's where I'm trying to give myself the patience and the leeway and the understanding that everybody's on their own journey. They're all doing it in their own time. And so for me, moving out to California, Nathan, it's been a blast. There's so much diversity. There's so much things to do. There's and I love it and I hate it. Like the traffic is god awful. The parking is whack. What is this? But when you think about just I think making that decision, and honestly, it could have been New York, it could have been the middle of nowhere. It really could have. But at least the decision was mine. It was mine to make. And for the first time, I decided to kind of take that leap.
Well, damn, dude. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Freaking
that was amazing.
That's so good.
That was amazing.
I'm so happy for you.
Thanks, KJ.
Yeah, super hyped. I just want to go through because I just want to get to where you're at right now on your path, because I feel like our journeys are very parallel in a lot of ways, especially specifically going back to that initial rejection. Like I had a moment like that when I was young too, went to a Korean thing, rejected it. My parents see that rejection and are like, why would we make him do anything Asian related when he doesn't like it? So like not having the opportunities to then engage. But like I think about that that first rejection and how it really set the foundation for how I would navigate as Asian and Asian stuff, and feeling that regret. So I wanted to start there because I want to say I think it's totally natural to feel that. None of that shame, none of that, any of that is on you for feeling that way and for rejecting that in the first place. We were put in untenable situations when it comes to being connected with our cultures, and through no fault of our own, had to navigate that shit. And so feeling that guilt, totally get it, because I think we all feel it at some point in some form or fashion. I totally know what you're talking about, because I've been talking about this moment a lot recently and thinking about that and processing that and going through some of that guilt. And so it's hard to tell myself that it's okay, that it wasn't my fault, but it's much easier for me to tell you that it's okay and it is not your fault to go through that. But specifically thinking about how you would go through and engage, and then finding yourself now at 30 going through experiencing something that I did not experience, like a near-death experience, you know, to be your Kickstarter, your motivator, whatever it was. But this life event that has you thinking about, well, what did I not do? And thinking about those past regrets. Like, mine was totally different, but also on this same journey of like, what is it that what's missing in my life? And it was like the piece of, like, a part of my identity, the piece of me that I just wasn't, that I just didn't know existed, but wasn't there for so long. Finding that piece, knowing that is my path that I'm supposed to be on, which leads us all here to sitting in this Zoom or the Zencastr room right now. Shout out Zencastr, to have this conversation, to be able to talk about this, and knowing that you're doing it on your own. And so just bringing it full circle to being like, just showering you with love and giving you your flowers right now for being on that path, because it's hard. It's hard to say yes to that. And it's hard to not always know what's going to be the next thing that we're going to find ourselves on, or where that's going to come from and how we're going to make it. So that's a difficult thing, going through it right now. So I feel you. And I love you for what you're doing, dude. You're doing it. So it takes a lot to do, and you're doing it. So
Thank you. I commend you for making the change. I mean, that's, like you said, I mean, granted, it was a moment on a hospital bed that you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do this. But I mean, that's still a hard thing to do once you come out of it, because you could easily have just gone right back to, I'm just going to go back to work. I'm just going to go keep doing the thing that I was doing. But instead you moved out to LA, and that's I found that so amusing when we did meet, because we were crossing paths. I'm leaving LA after being there for 20 years of doing kind of what you're doing. I mean, I went out there not to seek, anything about adoption, but finding it while I was out there. I found so many things, when I was in California, including, my wife, including meeting my, biological family when I was out there. Just, there's so much that I remember about California. But then we're switching places. You're going to California. I'm coming to Colorado with my family and trying to raise them out here. So I was really happy to have met you at that party, and I'm glad that I was on a journey to connect with the adoption community, and you were already doing that, and you were already involved in that community out here, which is something to also ask, I guess. How much of the community have you been how much of the community have you been involved in California, switching, kind of from the Colorado community to the adoptee community and out there?
Actually tons. So for me, the adoptee community has always been kind of this like safety and blanket, and kind of like this sense of warmth that I've always felt with myself, where I get to be myself, my true self. Not putting on some face, not being some kind of projection of myself, but my true self. And I always felt that was more comfortable within the adoptee spaces. And so I had a little bit of a falling out from the Colorado adoptee communities, mostly just because the camps were a large part of that, and I grew jaded from those through certain experiences. I still keep in touch with those that are very close to me, and but out here, I decided, well, gosh, there's got to be tons of adoptees. I mean, because the population in general is just like, it's massive.
It's a numbers game at that point.
Yeah.
That's right. It's just like, all right, well, they got to be here.
They got to be here. Just kind of point in a random direction, maybe a random Asian person. I don't know. But that was actually one of the first events that I did, was like, I got here in July, and then that, I think it was in September. And then, so I got settled in August, and then that September, they, AKSF, which is a Korean adoptee organization in San Francisco in the Bay Area. And then also there's an AKA SoCal group that's, I don't know, they're kind of dormant, but it was more the AKASF group that really kind of spurred this trip and had this event where a bunch of them just came down from the Bay. They had some programming, they did some karaoke and some potluck, and that's what we did. And I just felt at home. I felt at home. So it was like a home away from home. And so I think that's what really kind of helped me get settled in and say, Erik, you can still do this. You can still engage with the adoptee community. Yes, you might have maybe had a falling out, or maybe some bridges were burned, back in Colorado, but like you get to kind of reinvent how you engage with the adoptee community and how you get to present yourself and how you get to learn more about other adoptees' experiences, and my lens, my whatever you want to call it, like the scope of what I knew about adoptees just like expanded tenfold. And it was really amazing because people, I think, especially post-pandemic, and I shouldn't say post-pandemic because we're still kind of in it, in my opinion, but there's still this thing where I think a lot of people had that burgeoning, that blossoming of their adoption identity. And so the numbers, like you said, Patrick, like even jokingly, yes, but at the same time and realistically, there were so many more experiences that I never even heard of. There's, people that were gaslit their entire lives that just found out. There are, people from they were adopted as Korean, from Korean, with Korean parents, so they weren't transracial. There are people that they've adopted themselves. So it's all over the experiences. And so that being able to kind of widen my perspective of what it means to be a Korean adoptee was definitely evident in kind of those events. But also too, I just, once again, even though I was learning a lot, I still felt comfortable in that space. And I think in those spaces, it's really important to have people feel comfortable, have people feel safe. And because you're leaving yourself vulnerable. And I guess one of the things that I like but don't like is the trauma bonding that happens when you get into these spaces, because it can be very dangerous. There's times where I'm like, oh, this person's a Korean adoptee. What a unique thing. I'm going to go talk to them. And then it turns out, oh, they're kind of not a good human being. So never mind. But we've already kind of bonded through this trauma that we had as an adoptee. Like, how do I pull away? Kind of like in a nice way. But
do you say it in that voice in your head when you're going through that experience?
Yeah, I just envision the Homer Simpson meme where he's just slowly walking back into the bush.
No, I just imagine he turns over to imaginary Scooby. He's like, "Zoinks! I made a friend and I don't want to keep him." And Scooby's like, "Bro."
This is just my nice way of trying to say, like, there are going to be Korean adoptees that, or just people that share a very unique experience with you, and be careful and be cautious that they may not have the best intentions. Or exhibit the best behavior when engaging, or when after you kind of already connected. And don't also feel. I think for me, this is a lesson that I had to learn, was that because of my past experiences, and then also just kind of growing up within the adoptee community, like I also felt like maybe there was an obligation of me trying to help this person. I didn't. I felt maybe I was equipped to do that, but then after kind of learning more and more and more about this person, I was like,
and you were like, "Oh no,
I'm definitely not equipped to
I'm
handle
not a therapist or mental health professional."
Well, and I think that's huge too. And I've heard a number of other adoptees talk about it, and I'm not even like, I'm only aware of the term trauma bonding in adoptee spaces, and specifically with adoptees who've like engaged in the community for longer than 3 years, like I have, because I'm just a baby adoptee. But I think it's important to realize that, like, oh yeah, like your adoption is a thing that you have in common. Like, it should maybe stop and end there, and then remember that they're a whole other person. But it feels so wonderful to be seen and to be known by someone who gets it, where there need be no translation, no explanation. You don't have to drop into your script because realistically, like, you both know each other's beats, like you've both written your own, all that kind of stuff. And so it can feel really nice to interact with someone on that level. And if it's your first time or your second time, or that gives you just a type of endorphin rush, then you might seek after that again, depending on the experiences that you've had. And it can be really dangerous, like you said. I love that going to LA has exploded your mental model of what it means to be an interracial adoptee, a Korean adoptee, kind of at large. One of the things that you talk about on your form over and over again, which I mean, I get, because partially why you moved to LA, is representation in media and those kinds of things. I'm curious, as you've done this soul searching and thinking about who you are and who you want to be, and as you've then had your experience for adoptees experiences and had that expanded, what are you hoping for in media, maybe for the adoptee narrative and perspective? And is that something that you are working towards doing, like taking an active role in, being out there?
Yeah, that's thank you for kind of bringing that up, and also kind of really bookending that, the trauma bonding. I think that's something that's very important to kind of acknowledge. And then as far as shifting gears and going into media representation of adoptees, I think it was one of those things, right? When I saw it happening when I was younger, I was like, oh, Luke Skywalker's adopted. Oh, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, nearly every superhero on Earth is adopted.
Also, like every Disney princess, well, maybe not, they're not adopted, but they're all parentless, which we somewhat vibe with. So.
Right. So there's just so many of these hero's journeys, right? Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. I'm not going to get into that conversation, but
you don't need to give us like the save the cat. Yeah,
basically. I mean,
you were.
Listen, I will engage in film criticism and theory with you guys if you want, but I don't think this is the podcast for it. In any case, but the hero's journey, right? And it has this call to action, and I feel like in our own calls to action as an adoptee, it's never been genuine and it's never been treated seriously. And in my opinion, for what I would want to see in media representation for adoptees is that genuine. I'm looking for that genuine experience. And it is borderline documentary, but no offense to everybody, I'm sick of documentaries. I want something on a mass media. Seriously, though, I want something on a mass media scale.
No offense to anybody in documentaries, but I'm about to get offensive.
Well,
I like it.
I love that people are willing to share their experiences and leave themselves extremely vulnerable about their own personal lives and engage in this very genuine, right? I mean, it's straight from, it's a documentary. Of course, it's going to have its own angles, but that the point is that when you show a documentary about an adoptee to a non-adoptee or an audience that may not know what's going on, it's like, oh, it's very catered to that individual. Whereas there are dynamics within an adoptee's experience, whether you're domestic, intercountry, or whatever, that is kind of shared amongst the larger community and the diaspora of adoptees in general. So that's what I would like to see more of, is to hit those tones, hit those beats on a mass scale to fully convey what we want to see and be an advocate for how we want to be represented in mass media. And I just feel like every attempt that they're making right now is a step forward, and maybe not a step forward in the right direction. So that's where I think
step sideways.
Patrick and I, we've had many conversations about this, of how we want to make sure that when these projects are happening, or you hear about them happening, that we're getting our foot in the door and we have a seat at that table, and we are actually being represented not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera, and everywhere in between. Because who better to tell the experience of a Korean adoptee than a Korean adoptee themselves? So that's kind of just the baseline I'm working off of. And when they don't
Marvel Comics presents Adoption Story. That's what we want.
That'd be dope.
So a lot of the listeners might not have known, but Erik and I actually had the privilege of being on a panel with Khan and a bunch of other organizations, adoptee organizations, for Return to Soul. And that was a fairly big, I know it's not, it's in the realm of what you're talking about. It's not fiction. It's not a documentary. It's like, it's based off a true story and has some things that have been changed and so forth, but based off of, an adoptee's life and story, and Erik got the chance to be the moderator and interviewer for that. And I think you did a great job of that and interviewing Laura Bodful. But yeah, if anyone has a chance, I mean, I know we're not sponsored here. We're not talking about it, but I think that was a movie that is important and should be seen. So what would you agree, Erik? And what things have you taken away from that movie? Is that something that you're kind of talking about that you would like to see more of?
Yeah. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts on kind of adoptee representation in media and where we're currently at and what have we done so far. Honestly, Nathan, I look at all of the films of not just Korean adoptees, but adoption in general, of how they've created this framework of, yes, Patrick, whether it's like, this overwhelmingly positive thing, right? Or it's like, oh no, we adopted a devil child, right? The Omen is one of them, right? I think Brightburn is another one. Or they use as this like silly call to action in Lion, or the upcoming Joyride. I haven't seen it yet, but there's, as far as Return to Soul, I felt like on a very emotional level and how it kind of blurred the lines of documentary and fiction, that was probably the closest one of really encapsulating the cultural nuances of what it means to be a person that is an intercountry adoptee, transracial, and trying to find themselves all over again in their home country, in their country of birth. And in a way, it hit me a little bit hard, because that's exactly what I was kind of doing out here and moving to Koreatown. Was like, now I'm still trying to reinvent myself, trying to find who I am out here in relation to the larger Korean American populace. And I don't feel like I have to be Korean enough anymore. That's definitely something I've dispelled from my head, or I'm trying to anyway. But it's definitely something that is insanely difficult to navigate. But I'm really enjoying all of it. Like I'm enjoying kind of the I didn't know that older Korean American males, depending on the generation, tend to be a lot more conservative, which I didn't realize. There's also working at a quote unquote Korean company. There's certain other like work styles and stuff that I didn't really catch on to early, and that kind of differ from the companies I previously worked with. So, but as far as films go, I think being able to kind of mirror those experiences and put them on film, it's Return to Soul is not, it's not lasers, it's not superheroes, it's not princesses and fairy tales. It was a true to life narrative, and I think that's something that would resonate with a lot of people, and not just adoptees. Like, if you ever felt lost in your own skin in a foreign country, or just lost in general, this is a film that kind of taps into the anger and frustration that is there, the erratic behavior that might manifest from that anger and frustration, and just like the overall sense of feeling lost and feeling without a home. Yeah,
like that wandering kind of. Almost aimless. It's not. I agree with everything you just said about the movie. I think you gave a really accurate description of the movie and how it portrays that experience. And yeah, I think that sense of lost, I think, is a great way of not only feeling lost, but feeling lost, like you said, like, and then also that lost feeling. I don't fucking know. What
it's just you're spot on. You're actually spot on, dude. No, seriously, like you're spot on. I had a conversation with another Korean American filmmaker who she's releasing a 30-minute short called Goa, which is it's Korean for orphan. And I met up with her just the other day, and I was she was asking me like, tell me more about your experiences as an adoptee, and I was explaining to her, and she's like, Han, this is Han, and I was like, well, what the hell's Han, man? Like Hana one? No, she's like, Han, she's like, I'm not even gonna do a good job of explaining this or give it justice, but
no one can.
One of the things though she said was it was this inexplicable loss.
Yep.
You can't explain it, but it's this sense of loss.
Yep.
It's this somber sense of loss. And I'm just like, whoa. And it just, those, that short phrase just hit me entirely different. And kind of going back and looking at my experiences and why I was angry when I was younger, or why I, punched holes in my bedroom walls, why I did certain things, right? It was because there was just, I couldn't explain it. It was just this sense of loss or sense of wrong that I felt, I've experienced, and I had to express how I was feeling in those moments. But at the time, I didn't necessarily have the tools for it.
I can feel your Han coming out when you're talking about it right there, to be honest.
Your Han is showing.
Totally right. Your Han is definitely showing, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing all that, and totally agree. And this is a conversation that we need to continue to have, particularly media representation, especially with movies that are going to continue to use adoptee storylines. We got to be getting in front of that shit. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have you back because it is already 10:45 where I am.
Oh, wow.
And I'm getting a little snacky. I'm getting a little snacky having this conversation. And I want to just, I'll talk about it later. So we're going to transition to a snack real quick, and then we're going to keep talking. So snack time?
That lost loop.
Oh, you need the...
I don't know, unless you want to.
I got it, my bad.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Janchi Show. Snack time? I'm sorry, I'm just going to end it like Patrick ended on the last one with a question.
That's a good carryover. I am still questioning whether we're having snacks or not.
It is
and what I'm doing
time.
Here.
I know. What is the meaning of
what is the meaning of life?
42.
Today, we are having a snack by CW.
CW.
We haven't had one from them in a while. I still can't remember what it stands for. It's not Crown. It's what is it? Gobson Development.
I don't remember.
I don't know.
I know CW.
What are we eating though?
What is CW? We're eating
Crunchy
egg
wafer
cookies.
is what it stands for.
It looks it looks like vanilla wafers, but it says egg cookies. So I don't know. Somebody who can read Hangul, what else does it say?
It also says
not me.
Uyuwa, so there's milk probably flavor.
Yeah.
Hamke, I don't remember what that means, but it sounds familiar.
Hamke habmyeon?
Masinin. Masinin is flavor, and
egg.
Geran kwaja. So whatever that means.
One of those probably means egg.
It's egg and milk, so it's probably a vanilla wafer.
Okay. Well, the egg is the third
Looks
ingredient, so yeah, it does look like
on the package at least.
It does look tasty. I don't know. I was interested in these, and
I bought these
easy
from
to
Kaju
open.
Market, and they better be good because I had to buy 3 of them.
Oh, they smell good. They smell like vanilla wafer.
It does smell like a vanilla wafer.
Tastes like a vanilla wafer.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Where's my butterscotch pudding?
Oh wait. Oh.
A little
it tastes
drier.
like an eggy.
Yeah, a little drier in the aftertaste.
I taste that egg.
I didn't taste the egg. We have another.
It specifically tastes like egg white, like that's been cooked. So like
okay, now I can taste it.
Not like a meringue, but like I don't know, like it's like it's just a little further along.
When it gets all mushed up and soggy, it does feel like egg whites in my mouth.
So, but it's not bad. I'm
gonna have to compare this to a vanilla wafer because I feel like it's drier, but it could just be.
See, here's what you could do: you could send us not only these snacks, but then the snack to compare it to from America.
Yeah. Hey Nathan, can you spend more money on the show, please?
Yeah, I'll get right on that.
That's the next evolution of our show.
Thank you, Hyung.
Comparison sex.
고마워.
Yeah, I don't know. So one of the things I like with vanilla wafers is, like I said, butterscotch pudding or like banana pudding. For some reason, I always liked putting vanilla wafers.
I should have had this with my freaking creamy ice cream, but that was hours ago now.
Yeah.
Dang.
Oh, and I should mention, since people can't see, they look like vanilla wafers, but they look like about, I want to say, a third of the size of a vanilla wafer.
Are they larger normally?
It's the size of a quarter. Yeah.
Vanilla
Vanilla
wafers are like the size of a $50.
Yeah, vanilla wafer is like a $50. This is like a quarter.
These are like the cookie crisps of Nilla wafers.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Cookie Crisp. That is a reference I get.
The cereal?
Like a cookie crisp.
Yeah. I don't know. I tried that last cereal or the last snack we had in milk, and it was not good. So I am hesitant to try that again.
Cornflakes.
Yeah.
No, this would be good.
I don't know.
This would be good. And I think, honestly, if you just wanted to feel more Korean but still really enjoy some vanilla wafers, you could sub these and it would work in pretty much every context. Unless you're allergic to eggs, in which case, don't eat these, maybe.
Or wheat. Sugar.
Well, I don't think there's a vanilla flavor. I really do. It's just like egg and milk, and then
it's not very complex, but I can't stop eating them.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, I keep going back. So
it looks like wheat, flour, sugar, egg, shortening, cornstarch, processed butter, egg white. So you guys were right there. Mixed milk powder,
lemon,
glycerine ester of fatty acid. Interesting. Ammonium bicarbonate.
That doesn't sound safe.
That's a baking powder.
Oh, okay. That sounds more safe.
There's actually lemon flavor in
the
here.
The science version, unsafe.
Yeah. Exactly. Anytime I hear like glycerin, I just think of nitroglycerin, which I know is an explosive.
I just think of the Bush
Zorro
song.
The Bush song?
Yeah. Glycerin. No? Nobody? Okay.
I don't know what that
All right.
was.
Well,
I'm talking about the Mask of Zorro, or the Legend of Zorro over here.
All right. Before we get into ratings, Eric, I know we jumped pretty abruptly from our last question. So I have one more question for you. It's the hardest hitting question of the entire evening.
Okay.
Are the Nuggets going to beat the Lakers in a sweep? And if so, are they going to win the finals?
My Nuggets. I would love to see the Nuggets sweep the Lakers. Every time they come up against the Lakers, they're always it's always in the playoffs, and it's always just heartbreak because that's when we actually have a good team, and it's always the Lakers that stop us. I think Jokic is actually too big of a matchup right now, and can't be contained. Bruce Brown, the KCP, they just have so much depth in the Denver Nuggets team that I don't think the Lakers are going to be able to match up. And then if the Heat sweep the Boston Celtics, oh my goodness, I'm gonna cry because
I should have rigged up my soundboard for this.
I've hijacked the podcast.
Heat, I'm sorry, but the Heat, like that team scares me. Jimmy Butler is on one right now, and I don't know who on our team, on the Nuggets, our team, like I'm still living there in Denver. I don't know who on the Nuggets would be able to fully stop Jimmy Butler magic, because it's like he's going through a tear. And then even Duncan Robinson throwing up that alley-oop to Bam Adebayo, it's like these guys can't lose. So they're on a magical run. I would hate for us to get to the NBA Finals and then meet the Heat in their magical run, and for one of us to not have it. But out of all the teams, the Denver Nuggets haven't won an NBA championship, so I would love to see them win one.
That's true. I want to see Jimmy get one, but also
how is this still happening?
I don't know for you if the Nuggets won.
Make it stop.
I checked out a long time ago.
Oh my god!
I appreciate you taking the time and being open and vulnerable about that answer regarding one of your favorite sports teams.
Eric, if people want to find you and continue this conversation with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram at KEMP, which is my last name, BOP. So kind of like Kimbap. But I tried to get it with a
play on words.
Yeah,
I like it.
It makes sense to me. Not like other Korean play on words.
Yeah, I know.
Or like any of the NBA playoffs that we just talked about for the last 3 minutes.
That makes sense to me. I just don't care.
I enjoyed your take. I enjoyed their reactions to you continuing on when I thought they thought that you were going to stop.
Yeah.
I was going to go look for some banana pudding.
Period, and the period became a semicolon? Rude.
I started eating a second snack.
This is why Patrick and I get along well, though, is that we're both talkers. So,
see, I like sports, and then guys who really like sports start talking about sports. I'm like, I'm out. I'm so done.
I guess I don't like sports anymore.
Once we get to stats, I'm like, nope. Find me some food. I'll be talking to the ladies.
Yeah, I go to the games to eat at the snack bar. So
I'm talking about the stats and eating the snacks.
Well, talking about stats and snacks, I'm going to give this egg cookie a 4 out of 5. I think it's pretty solid. Patsy's giving me multiple thumbs up for that transition.
So good.
So good.
It was so good.
Yeah, 4 out of 5. I think it's really, really good. I can't stop eating it. Maybe it was the stat talk, or the streak talk, but I've almost finished the bag. I've almost swept the bag, if you will.
Goodness.
Come on, Janchi.
Yeah. So,
wow.
4 out of 5 for me.
Eric, what do you think?
Well, I was hoping that they would be good because I was forced to buy a 3-pack of these because they didn't come in individual packs. So I was like, oh, these things better be good or else I just wasted money on these. But I'd give them 4.5 out of 5.
Wow.
They're a little bit drier than what I wanted, and a little bit tad smaller and crumbly. But overall, it's kind of creating a mess on my desk. But overall, the taste is solid and
still talking 90% field goals.
Mm-hmm. Still good. Okay,
he's 90% from the field.
He's stat talk.
I'm really trying to. Yeah, I'm really trying to do
Way to
it.
keep up.
Stat
AJ.
chat. Give me that stat filter. Find it in my story.
I'm going 4.5 out of 5 too, for all those same reasons. A little crumbly, a little small. I could probably use a little bit of chocolate on there. Definitely give it a 5 if it had some chocolate on it.
You always want chocolate on there.
I got a problem. 4.5.
Can somebody buy Patrick a chocolate fountain?
I know.
And just
It's okay.
have next to him for the show. Just dip a thing in. Be like, oh yeah, it's so much better with chocolate.
I'll just never shut it off.
I'd like it if
Never
it was
change the
saltier.
chocolate.
Maybe a little salted caramel on top. And then
Ooh, that does sound pretty good.
Ooh, that
Right?
does sound good.
All right, but I'm gonna go with in line with KJ and do a 4 out of 5 as well. Pretty well-rounded snack. Can't really say much else. I am hoping to find some banana pudding soon, though. But
Can't say much else but that. You'll have more to say then.
Look, yeah.
Should we get you a banana pudding fountain, Nathan?
Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing.
No, I used to always
sounds
dip
terrible.
my vanilla wafers in banana pudding or butterscotch pudding. So I'm having flashbacks of my childhood.
Remember you just had pudding in the fridge and how great
No.
that was?
That was never a fact of my life.
Oh,
Yep.
it was
Like
only
snack
when I
packs.
went to my grandma's.
Like the chocolate.
Actually, no, we had
yeah.
pudding too.
Yeah.
All right.
I've
That's
never
a
had
Midwest
chocolate
thing.
pudding or vanilla pudding.
You've
as a
never
kid.
had it?
No, as a kid.
Oh, I was like,
Oh, I was like,
we were
sir.
more of a Jello family.
I'm coming to LA right now.
Oh, interesting
Were you
take.
a Jello with Cool Whip?
Cool whip.
Whip? Or just
No,
Jello?
we're just the Jello.
Jello
in the
with
cup.
fruit.
Oh my!
Hey, this
dad
is
would
snack
make a
time.
Jell-O
It's
fruit.
relevant.
Oh my god.
Eric, where can listeners find you?
Yeah, to either talk about Jello or NBA
Or sports.
Yeah, just broadly sports.
Those.
Once again, they can find me on Instagram at KEMP, KEMPBOP. So Kempbop, just like Kimbop. And they can find me on Facebook if they'd like. I'm not very active there. And same with Twitter. I'm not really active there, but I have an account.
But the
Just
point is,
I'm just
you're
lurking.
there.
You're there.
Find them.
Yeah.
If someone
Instagram,
were
I'm
to
pretty
find
active.
you, they could possibly find you there.
80% of being there is just showing up.
And the
And
other
we
20%
appreciate you showing up.
is
Eric.
not deleting your account.
You know, KJ, I
Not
think you dropped the
deleting
most
your-
stats out of all of us by this point.
Wait, who did? Nathan?
KJ.
I don't
Oh,
think
yeah.
that saying percentages is stats, but all right.
The stats of this episode.
Hey, 100% of people who eat tomatoes will die. So let's just move on.
That is rude.
That is the daddest of jokes.
That's a great stat.
Did Abe Lincoln say that?
Okay.
I don't.
Abe Lincoln?
I mean, have you ever
Yeah.
wondered if soy milk is just
Oh my god.
What's
Spanish
happening right
milk introducing
Patrick,
itself?
close out the show.
Okay.
Dear Lord.
If people want to connect with us as a show on the socials, they can do that at Janchi Show If they want to send us the actual statistics of things that we were talking about in this episode, they can do that via email to janchishow@gmail.com, or they can leave it to us via voice message at 972-677-8867. If y'all are feeling inclined to support us in any way, you can go to janchishow.com. There are a number of different ways that you can support us. Or if you're feeling froggy, you can go onto the podcast player you're currently listening to this on and leave us a rating or a review. Always appreciate that as well. If you want to find me, you can do that at Patrick in the World in most places, except for Facebook and Twitter and other places.
Wow. I'm at KJ Rilke, wherever I want to be found on the internet.
I'm N Nowak on Instagram, and I'm Nathan Nowak on Facebook. It might be one of the last ones.
Oh, that's true. He is in there manning the after party. If you are still a Facebook frequenter, join us in the after party on Facebook. Nathan will be there. I will not.
I can make an appearance occasionally.
KJ might pop in.
I'll pop my head in there.
Eric could pop in too.
Yeah.
He's there.
That's true.
We've established he's there, not active.
Oh, shoot. Eric and I are on the subreddit.
That's right.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
that's true. The subreddit. How
Where's
is
my
that
free
going,
shirt?
by the way?
I don't know. Honestly,
You
I
can offer
regularly
free
forget about
shirts
it.
to people?
Wait.
We
Hold up. You guys said it on the podcast.
Oh, God.
I'm pretty sure we said it on air.
Yeah.
About what?
I don't remember.
You would give a
but
free
Eric was
shirt
just
to the first person that would create a subreddit of the Janchi Show.
Yeah.
Oh, that
So-
sounds like something you'd say.
And then
Beat
Eric
everybody
was
to
like,
it.
And it
I'll
sounds
do
like
anything
something
for a
Eric would
free
do.
shirt. At this point, honestly, if someone just said, I did this to support the show and I want a free
Well, I'll
shirt,
give
I'd
you
be
a free
like,
shirt.
apparently I said that online. So
Yeah.
Wait, Patrick's going to give you a free shirt of which he does not own any of.
Yeah. No, I got some other shirts I can give you for free. That I
Not
don't
going to
want
be a
anymore.
John T-shirt.
wow.
Oh, okay. Well, Eric, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your story and just being open and vulnerable with us about where you're at right now and, everything that's went into getting here. So hope to have you back on the show sometime. Let's definitely get you back on to talk NBA Finals because I think that your boys are
They'll probably
doing
still
pretty
be
good.
happening in June, right?
Yeah, in June. That's when they end.
Frick. They'll probably still be happening in September, right?
I was going to say they might even play again next year.
October.
All right.
He
October
says
is
he
when the
doesn't
season
like
starts.
basketball, but he just marked the ending and the beginning months of
I
the
don't know
basketball
anything
season.
about basketball.
He did. He knows. He's a Mavs fan for sure.
It's a curse.
A Luka guy.
Luka.
Are they going to keep
Magic.
Kyrie? What do you think? He doesn't know.
Get rid of Kyrie. That was a mistake.
All right.
I don't know. Is he
Until
even
next
playing
time.
anymore?
Janchi, hey-o.
Janchi, hey-o.
Hey-o. Hey-o.
Nathan literally is like, shut the hell up.
Get me the F out of here. I want to go to bed.
Where's my banana pudding?
Oh.